here for our core picks at this week's Honda Classic. Here in this video, we'll be covering my top plays in each price range for DFS contests, and of course how I'll be attacking some of the strategy with those players as well. Last week at the Genesis Invitational was a bit of a weird one. From a scoring perspective, you had, of course, Joaquin Niemann, the winner, and Cameron Young get out to outrageous scores, stuff that we haven't seen at Genesis ever, particularly at Riviera Country Club. There was some hail, rain early in the week. It made things a little bit easier, particularly because as soon as the rain and hail got out of there, it was like you were playing in a dome for the weekend. So not only did they have softer conditions, obviously very pristine conditions in terms of the wind, so they went out there and took advantage. So now we head over to Florida, my neck of the woods, a place that I'm extremely comfortable with. I know the conditions over here all too well. I'll be on site for all 4 days, and of course on Wednesday for the practice round. So we'll have a very good idea of how this course is playing. I'll be heading over there on Wednesday morning to do either a live stream or a report from the course in terms of a video. So make sure to go ahead and look forward to that. But with that being said, we are looking to build on yet another pretty good week. Last week we were profitable in DFS, largely in part to our main lineup, where we got 6 of 6 through the cut. The global average in most of the single entry contests was right around 4.8%. So doing so was really our key to success because we didn't have Joaquin Niemann, didn't have Cameron Young. A lot of those guys at the top of the board weren't in our lineup. Fortunately, though, anytime you get a 6 of 6, particularly in one of these single entry type of contests, it's pretty hard not to cash. So that was really carrying us for this week because, like I said, Joaquin Niemann wasn't somebody that I saw having that type of week. I just thought the around the green play would be a little bit more of an issue for him, but we also didn't expect it to play nearly as easy as it did. That was a fluke. Not anyone around the industry was saying that. So hats off to anybody that played Joaquin Niemann. The number was really nice. I mean, I think the sports books were betting on the fact that the conditions were going to be tough, right? So players like a Joaquin Niemann, they kind of threw out the board, right? They didn't think that he would have any chance of winning. So congrats to anyone out there that was a backer. I know quite a few people in the Discord did back Joaquin Niemann, so hats off to anyone that did so. And like I said, we're moving on to now the Honda Classic, one of my more favorite events of the year. And this course is always tough. Even if you make this place as easy as humanly possible, going to be extremely tough for these tour players. So should be a really good test. With that being said, let's go ahead and hop into some of the key stats for this week, and of course our targets for the Honda. Alright guys, on the screen you can see our key stats for this week. I always like to do a little bit of a course review, just in case anyone hasn't seen the full course breakdown. Of course, a link to that is in the description for anyone that hasn't seen it. Highly recommend it. It is a full comprehensive breakdown that's 30 minutes long. First off though, shots gained approach is the key at Honda. The PGA National is an extremely difficult golf course, whether it's around the green, of course off the tee, there's plenty of hazards in play, and being precise is really the name of the game, whether it's, again, approaching the greens where you see a ton of my weighting, 40% this week, or of course our number 2 key stat being driving accuracy. More than half of what I'm looking at this week is being precise, just making sure that you're keeping yourself out of trouble. In terms of some of these approach ranges, you can see I'm looking at a majority of shots from that 150 to 175 range. Almost all of these par 4s, you're going to have approach shots from that range, or at the very least from 175 to 200 for some of the shorter players in the field. This 125 to 150 range is more to actually keep yourself out of trouble. There's going to be plenty of circumstances where you're just pitching out, particularly if you're near some of these hazards. So having that ability to recover from the 125 to 150 or even the 125 in range is going to be at least a little bit useful as well. We talked about driving accuracy. Something else I'm looking at, shots gained putting on Bermuda. We have seen quite a few putting specialists have success at Honda. Driving distance isn't something I want to completely disregard, but just something to note that this 8% marker that we have it down for is much lower than what we have for most PGA Tour events. Bogey avoidance, of course, with difficult conditions, you always are looking at that type of thing. Usually it gets pretty windy here at the Honda. You can see I'm considering sand saves, par 4 scoring because this is a par 70 setup, and shots gained putting on fast greens. They tend to run pretty lightning quick down here in South Florida. Now moving over to the core picks, and up top we're going to go to Sungjae Im, somebody who I did fade last week just because I expected him to be a little bit rusty. And if we take a look at some of the shots gained metrics from his made cut last week, but didn't really do anything special with it, he was hardly a gainer off the tee and hardly a gainer on approach, which isn't something that we typically see from a Sungjae Im, but he was a significant gainer around the green and also on the greens. which is at least a little bit encouraging for us. Of course, he didn't go out there in top 10 or anything like that, but down in South Florida, he's always his best. These are just golf courses where you have to be precise. You have to be accurate off of the tee because there's so much water in play. That's the essence of Florida golf. And Sungjae Im is built for these golf courses. So not a surprise that he's won this event. He's competed at almost every single event down here in the Florida swing, has at least been in contention from one time to another. And for these next 3 to 4 weeks, he's going to be one of my favorite plays, and particularly when he's the best play on the slate. You can see in terms of recent form, he's number 1 in the field, number 2 in the field in terms of a course fit. He's a great putter on Bermuda grass for his career. And if we go ahead and take a look at the course history, I mean, of course, the number one thing that jumps off the board is the win here in 2020. He also made the cut his first time out here in 2019, and also had an 8th place finish last year, which wasn't enough to be optimal because he was also one of the more expensive players in the field, but at the very least put up a more than respectable finish. In terms of some of the recent form, if we take a look at that, he's been solid in 11th place at the Amex, 6th at the Farmers, 33rd at the Genesis. He's been making cuts. Again, he took this 2-week break, which kind of concerned me going into the Genesis. Perhaps that's why he only finished there in 33rd. But if he's going to be rusty and still make the cut, still at least put up a respectable score, that's at least going to make him exciting in my book. Taking a look at some of the shots gained metrics, he's one of the best drivers in the field. He's top 5 in that category, gaining over 0.6 shots gained off the tee per round. On approach, gaining over a third of a stroke per round, over a third of a stroke per round around the green, and gaining with the putter. And that's really the key to success at the Honda Classic, is to be good in all 4 major statistical categories. You really can't have a huge hole in your game, or else this golf course is going to come up and sting you, really bite you in that category, which I know he's going to be chalk. I know he's the most expensive player on the slate. Just think it makes a lot of sense. Somebody that I will be going back to, and somebody I already have an outright bet on as well. Next up, we have Billy Horschel here at $9,600. Also, in terms of being precise off the tee, precise into greens, is giving us exactly what we're looking for. In the recent form, I don't think many people would expect it, but he's coming in as one of the best players in the field there at number 8. So I like the shots gained putting on Bermuda. If we take a look at some of the recent form, it's also been a little bit sneaky. He has the 6th place finish at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, where he snuck up there on Sunday with that solid round. And at the Farmers Insurance Open there at Torrey Pines, which is not a golf course that really fits his game, he finished 11th. So this is somebody who's been really good of late. If we take a look at the course history, it gets actually even better. If we take a look at that, he's made his cut in 3 of 4. He's a 4th place in 2017, a 16th in 2019. I mean, just overall, there's just not a lot to really hate about this play here. Down here at the shots gained metrics, you can see the approach play hasn't really been consistent, but he's been one of the best players around the green and on the greens on all of the PGA Tour. The off the tee play has been more than adequate. He's gotten a lot longer over the years, and even though he's traded a little bit of accuracy for that distance, he still ranks well above average in terms of keeping it in play. It's really going to come down to the approach play, which if we take a look at a little bit of a smaller sample size for somebody like a Billy Horschel, you can see it's still there in the negative, but still gaining across all the other shots gained categories. So this is somebody who's pretty much always going to put up that type of a profile there. And again, even though approach play is the number 1 stat that I'm looking at, in terms of pedigree, he's a lot better than a lot of his peers here. Again, a lot of these guys have been playing over in the Middle East, and even though some of their box scores do look good, this is something I want to talk about from a strategy perspective. The fields are nowhere near as strong as what these guys were playing over here on the PGA Tour. Even there in the fall swing, where a lot of those fields were weak in terms of PGA Tour standards, they were probably 2 to 3 times as strong as these international fields that a lot of guys like a Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, Padraig Harrington, for example, has had a great run of golf over there in the Middle East. A lot of that is due to the field strength. So I think we need to normalize these numbers just a little bit. Just keep that in mind when you're looking at some of this analysis, particularly for some of these guys that we haven't seen over here on the PGA Tour. On the other hand, for example, right, 2 very strong fields in the Waste Management Open, and of course over there with Torrey Pines, where Billy Horschel found success, where I'm going to put a lot more stock in that type of performance than some of these other guys in that range. Coming down a little bit further, we have Aaron Wise, who pretty much always shows up to the Honda Classic and plays well. If we go to the course history, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. You can see he had a 13th place finish last year. In reality, he was in contention to win this golf tournament, so a lot better than a 13th in terms of the Thursday through Saturday stuff, 35th in 2020 and also 33rd in 2018. So he's made the cut all 3 appearances here. He's shown that top end upside. And of course, he's somebody the recent form hasn't looked very good on, but that's also why he's not chalk and also why he's not going to be $9,500 this week. If he had been coming in with multiple made cuts, the type of form that he showed during the fall where he had made almost every single cut and been posting top 25s, gaining with the putting, everything that we were looking for an Aaron Wise, he would be the highest owned play on the slate. So we really have to take what we're given to us. I expect him to come in way lower owned than he should be because of some of that recent form. And in reality, he made his cut his last time out, right? It wasn't anything flashy at the Genesis, but that was a really strong field. I had him in my main lineup, as you guys saw during the intro. He ended up scoring at least better than the average player, right? Because he ended up making the cut, at least making his fair share amount of birdies. Now that he becomes to a course that is much, much better for his game, the more difficult a golf course is, the better Aaron Wise is going to be because he is so precise. Much like a Billy Horschel, much like our top play up top Sungjae Im, there are people that keep the ball in play. And when there's penalty strokes to be had out there, there are people that don't blow up and for that reason can post scores at this type of golf course. So I expect the ownership to come in relatively low. Of course, if we take a look at these last 24 measured rounds, just to give you an idea of how he's been hitting the ball. I mean, look at this, gaining over 0.4 of a stroke per round on approach. The off the tee play, he's at least been gaining in that department. Hasn't been quite as prolific as what we've seen in the past, but the putter has still been a positive, and that was despite having 3 straight tournaments where it's been really negative. So I like to see that. I like to see that even in the last 24 measured rounds, he's still gaining, even with those last 3 hairy events. Next up, we're going to have Denny McCarthy at $7,800. He's another player that has good course history here at the Honda Classic, and this is one of the few courses where I do put a lot of stock into this course history. As you can tell at this point, it is something that I'm focusing on because this is a difficult track. And in general, when you have difficult tracks, guys that can find success, that kind of figure out the strategy to the golf course, have success in the years future. And you can see his first 3 starts were not good here. They were all missed cuts, but he seems to have figured something out. Obviously last year tied for 3rd, down here with CT Pan as well, over there in 2021. He's not somebody who's a flashy player. Again, he's more of a putting specialist than anything. He's a little bit inconsistent with the approach play. If there's one thing that Denny McCarthy can do, it's keep the ball in play off the tee. He's one of the more accurate drivers on all of the PGA Tour. That's why he's had success at golf tournaments like TPC Sawgrass, where there's a ton of water in play because he doesn't put himself in that type of situation. If we take a look at the recent form, it's also a huge bright spot. He has a 12th place finish over there at Pebble Beach, a 6th place at the Amex, and even though he missed the cut at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, that's also why this guy isn't $8,800 and also why he's not going to be 25-30% owned. So I put him and Aaron Wise in a very similar bucket where the recent performance actually makes him a slightly better play for me. And one thing we know about Denny McCarthy is that on these grainy Bermuda grass surfaces, there is no better putter in the world. He's by far the best putter in the world to begin with, but you put him on Bermuda grass and the guy is going to make an insane amount of putts. So if you're watching this tournament in person, like I will be for a lot of this week, just go ahead and follow Denny McCarthy for a little bit. You're going to see some insane putts made. Going down a little bit further, we have Zach Johnson as our diamond in the rough. He's $7,200. He's somebody who, if I told you he's coming in with good recent form, you'd probably be like, what are you talking about? But let's go ahead and look at this. He absolutely has been. It's one of the more surprising things that I saw. First off, a 43 at the Waste Management, nothing to really write home about, but that was a golf course that didn't really fit his game at all. So the fact that he was able to get through the cut there, post a respectable finish, that is very solid for Zach Johnson. Again, he's one of the shorter hitters on tour, not really that good with his approach play, but got it done there that week. We showed really good ball striking prowess, which isn't something that we used to see from him. And of course, the 14th at the Amex. It's much better than what we've seen over the last, let's say, 2 to 3 months for him. The course history as well is elite for Zach Johnson. He posted an 8th place finish last year. He's made the cut in his last 4 trips. Also a 27th place finish there in 2017. And even though he's not nearly the same player as he was in 2017, the 8th place finish from last year sure as shit matters. So I do like him there at $7,200. Some of the recent form metrics also paint a relatively good picture for a Zach Johnson. If we take a look at him, he's not gaining the most strokes off the tee. He never will. He's going to be one of the worst players that's a professional at that type of category, but you can see he's right around neutral with the approach play, which, like I said, for somebody as inconsistent as a Zach Johnson isn't all that bad. Gaining around the green and, of course, gaining with the putting. So he is looking like typical Zach Johnson, and anything that we see here from him in the past, right, in terms of course history, is somebody that is really solid with that type of blueprint. So I like him at $7,200. I think it's more than a fair enough price. And I also think he comes in with really low ownership. And now lastly, our flyer play going to be Kramer Hickok at $6,800. He's somebody who the recent form has been sneaky, much like Zach Johnson. Go ahead and take a look at his past finishes. You can see of late he had the miscut there, also the miscut there, the 53rd at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. But if we broaden that a little bit, take a look at the few tournaments before that. It's multiple made cuts, multiple top 25 finishes, and somebody who in terms of the shots gained metrics has looked excellent. So let's go ahead and take a look at exactly what he's excelled at. Over here, Kramer Hickok, you can see first off, he's gaining off the tee. He's also gaining on approach, but also gaining significantly with the putter, which for Kramer Hickok isn't something that we typically say. He's one of the shakier putters on the PGA Tour, but for whatever reason, the last 24 measured round, these last 7-8 events for a Hickok have been excellent. So I like to see that. I also like to see the fact that he's gaining in both of the ball striking categories, something that he's used to doing, right? Usually one of the more stout ball strikers in all of the PGA Tour, but that putter, that it's usually a negative for him, that he's been excelling with of late, is a huge deal. If we take a look at the course history, he's also somebody that has shown something at this golf course, and his 2 trips here both made cuts. He has a 30th place in 2019, a 21st place in 2020. Did not play here last year in 2021, but I don't hold that against him, right? He wasn't really that solid on his status, was somebody that was in that 150 to 175 category, really getting starts when he could. And the reason why he's getting to play this year around is because he's been so much better, because he's been a lot more consistent with his play. So the fact that he's a much better player at this point of his career, again, is more well-rounded. He's had that good course history. The recent form, even though there's 2 missed cuts out of his last 3 starts, if we look a little bit past that, it's gone a lot better. I'm going to like this play at low ownership. Also somebody that I think has legit top 10 or even top 5 upside at this event. That's all I've got for this week's core picks. Before we go on and get out of here, go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you think ends up taking home this tournament. For me, I think Sungjae Im has the best chance, but I also have outrights on Billy Horschel, Aaron Wise, Garrett Kago, so I would be remiss to not mention their names. But go ahead and let me know who you guys have got down below. And as always, going to have even more DFS content coming throughout the week, whether it's our value picks later on this afternoon, our fades and sleepers tomorrow morning, our weekly DFS live stream, that extra course content I talked about on Wednesday that'll be coming out. I'll mention it at some point this week, but sometime Wednesday afternoon, we'll have prize picks content. We'll also have showdown content for the weekend. I mean, just a lot to come. So look forward to all of that, guys. Make sure you like the video if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. That way you guys don't miss any of that content I mentioned to come. Good luck with any of your lineups this week. Hopefully you guys had a really big week last week at the Genesis Invitational, and let's get this cash.